He was one of the first high-profile men of the Me Too era to actually be charged with sexual assault, but now the criminal case against Kevin Spacey has been dropped. Spacey, as I'm sure you know, had been accused of groping the then 18-year-old son of former Boston News anchor Heather Unruh at a Nantucket bar. And it was Unruh who first came forward more than a year ago to share her son's story.
Kevin Spacey bought him drink after drink after drink. And when my son was drunk, Spacey made his move and sexually assaulted him.
But over the last several weeks, the case against Spacey started falling apart. First, the accuser withdrew a separate civil lawsuit, and then he took the fifth when he was asked questions about possible deletions from the cell phone he had at the time of the alleged assault, which he was not able to produce at trial. Several days later, prosecutors dropped the criminal case altogether. I'm joined now by the accuser's attorney, Mitchell Garabedian, who, as you know, has represented thousands of victims of sexual abuse, particularly at the hands of the Catholic Church hierarchy. Mitchell, thanks for being here. How's your client doing?
He's doing fine. He's grounded. He's dealing with the remnants of what happened in court, and he's trying to move on with his life.
Can we start with the civil thing first? You file, in the middle of the criminal proceeding, you file a civil suit on behalf of the young man. Within a week, you withdraw it, which is not that weird. What's weird is you withdraw it with prejudice. For the people at home, that means legally, I cannot, under any circumstance, refile. The speculation, including on this show, was those things happen when a deal has been cut, a settlement has been reached. But Heather Unruh said during the criminal trial that no deal had been reached. Is that true?
Yeah, there was no deal reached, and it was filed on June 26th.
Right.
The statute of limitations was running on July 7th. It was dismissed on July 3rd, and it was dismissed with prejudice because once you pass July 7th, whether it's dismissed with prejudice or without prejudice, you can't revive it. The statute of limitations is gone. That's Massachusetts law. It can't
so that was
be
the
revived.
sole reason?
Yeah, the rest is academic. Whether it was dismissed with prejudice or without prejudice, it couldn't be revived. It's just an academic
Well, but it
argument.
could have pended for a while. It wasn't like it was going to go to trial next week or next month.
The client was on an emotional roller coaster. He was only 21 years old at the time. You know, I've represented victims who've waited 60, 70, 80 years before coming forward. The criminal trial was enough for him emotionally. I did not want to harm the client.
Were there any discussions of a settlement, even though there was no conclusion? Were any discussions of a settlement?
None whatsoever.
You know, the DA dropped the case, as I'm sure virtually everybody knows. It was an internationally covered, in a great part because the client decided he wouldn't testify. He took the fifth. Did you know in advance that he was going to take the fifth on the stand?
No, I did not. I did not realize it. It came as a total surprise. There were a lot of surprises in this case.
Like what?
The missing cell phone. My clients wanted nothing more to proceed with this case. But the problem was there was a missing cell phone. And they state...
Who's they? The cop?
My clients, the family, state they never were given a cell phone. There was
never given it back by the
never
police.
given it back. I'm sorry, never given it back. There was never any discussion amongst family members about the state police coming by last night, about the state police coming by 2 days ago, returning the cell phone. No discussion. Let me just say one thing. If a woman is attacked by a man and she defends herself with a hatchet and then charges are pressed against the man for assault and battery, for instance, the police are going to give the hatchet back before the trial even takes place, never mind appeals. And then they're going to give it back to the non-user, to someone else who didn't use the hatchet, and they're not going to get a receipt for the hatchet, and they're going to tell the...
And they admit they didn't get a receipt, by the way.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting their story that they gave back without a receipt is cooked. It's not even true.
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
So getting back to you were surprised when your client took the fifth. Would you have even taken this case had you known that he was ultimately going to take the fifth on questions of possible deletions from the cell phone?
It's a question of preparation. The district attorney in Nantucket County has done a great job through the years, and this case, and he's very skilled, and I'd like to find out why this case was in district court as opposed to superior court, where there are more resources for the victim to be prepared to get ready for a trial, for the prosecutors to have more resources. I don't understand why.
So why are you bringing up that point? Because you think you might have otherwise known about the possibility of him taking the Fifth?
Well, they would have sat down with the victim and said, okay, this is what the process is like.
But you knew the phone was going to be an issue, did you not, at the beginning of this thing?
Don't forget, on the phone, there was a 4 to 5 second video of this happening, okay? We didn't know the phone was going to get lost at the beginning of this. This is not an issue of whether it happened. It's an issue of consent.
So do you know why he took the Fifth?
Yes.
Can you share it with us?
I cannot share it because of attorney-client privilege, but I firmly believe that it would have not adversely affected the criminal case.
Here, I want to get back to whether...
But let me explain something to you. You've got a 21-year-old man. He's courageous, okay? He was sexually assaulted. He's standing up to the world in his mind. He's putting all his energy to be bold and courageous and strong. And he's standing on the stand, and he's being attacked by the defense counsel who's doing his job. And he doesn't feel as though he's been prepared for this at all. And he wants to... He just can't handle it.
So were you suggesting that even he didn't know that he was going to take the Fifth until that break in the action there?
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, without a doubt.
That he did not know that he was going to do it?
He didn't know anything about the Fifth. He did not know the issue about the Fifth until he was on the stand.
Okay. One last thing about the phone. Here is Heather Unruh, who was kind enough to come here a long time ago with you when this all proceeded, during her testimony also about the phone.
It was not relevant to the case. Well, I didn't touch anything that was relevant to the case.
Ms. Unruh, you were not the gatekeeper, were you? The police were the gatekeeper. And God forbid, we might be the gatekeeper or the judge might be the gatekeeper. You understand that, right?
I'm beginning to understand that now.
I should have said at the beginning of that she was also talking about some deletions that she said had no relevance. Was that another one of the surprises for you, Mitchell?
What I did was, well, she told the police she had deleted two. They were
so you knew about that?
I knew about that, and I retrieved one of them for the police, and the other one I couldn't find. And there were frat party incidents.
So what were the other surprises?
Well, just the whole matter was, if you look at the entire matter, it was... My client was not prepared to go through what he went through, and I think that was the major surprise. The whole case was a surprise, the ways it was handled.
You know, you mentioned D.A. O'Keefe there. You were in that Sunday meeting where he said he was going to drop the charge.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, you were not?
No.
Did the family, I'm sure you spoke to them, did the family, when they were notified of that, argue for him to proceed? Did they argue that maybe their son should be immunized so that he could testify without fear of incriminating himself?
It was left up to their son. It was left up to their son because this was weighing so heavy on his mind.
Does he have, I mean, you have been kind enough to come here with some of the bravest people I ever met in my life, and I've learned through you and other people like you that one never decides when is the right time for someone to tell their story. They decide when the right time is. Do you think he will decide at some point that he wants to tell the story himself?
Quite possibly. It may happen next year. It may happen 30 years from now. It may happen 50 years. We just don't know. That's the problem with being sexually abused.
You know, almost every time you're here and we're talking about some major case you're involved in, I ask you about whether or not you've been contacted as a result of the case by others, and the answer is almost always yes. I asked you when you were here with Heather Unruh a year and a half ago or so, I asked if you had heard from anybody since your representation. You said no, but then Heather immediately had this to say. Here's Heather Unruh again.
Some are Nantucket connected. I talked to one gentleman today who has a Nantucket connection, and some are in Great Britain, some are in New York, Pennsylvania, L.A., They're really spread out everywhere. In fact, one gentleman in Great Britain has gone to the police, and he said that it was from that initial tweet that I did that gave him the confidence to go and report it.
Have any of those materialized as far as you know in the 18 months since we spoke?
One person has contacted me, but what happened at that hearing has had a chilling effect with some victims.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to end. I know, again, you represent every person, and but now that it is over, what is the impact of a situation like this on the person who's sitting at home saying, I'm almost ready to have the courage to come forward? What does that do?
Well, some victims get ticked off, they're unhappy, they want to come forward. But it's also had a chilling effect on other victims. I've given them the option to go to district attorneys, for instance, in Massachusetts. They said, not what happened, not after what happened in the Spacey matter.
You don't mean victims of Spacey, you mean victims of other people, correct?
Victims of other people, yeah.
Fair enough. Mitchell, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much for your time.